Ooh, what's that about? For biting. The gaps for biting.
Yeah, that's
For
how I
Biden.
grip.
Gaps
For
for
Biden.
Biden.
Joe
Gaps for
Biden.
Biden. Joe Biden.
That's your
President
Joe
Joe Biden.
Hello and welcome to a very special episode of the Date Night Dice podcast. We just recently watched the first 3 episodes of the new Wheel of Time TV series dropped on Amazon. We've watched those episodes, and at least some of us wanted to talk about it.
At least one or more people wanted to talk about
Look,
it.
doing this show was not my idea, but I was not opposed to it. We'll say it that way.
Well, you've had so much to say in the past few days, so.
I really feel like, and we'll get into this more, but my mom watched it with us. So it was
get her.
me and Emily and my dad and my mom, because my parents are visiting. And she doesn't know anything about the Wheel of Time. And I feel like me and my dad absolutely ruined it for her. Like all the stuff we were saying while she's just trying to enjoy this TV show.
You were talking during it?
Well, I would talk after.
Shame on you.
It was terrible.
Yeah, it was like, do you know who that is? Well, that person doesn't.
It's really embarrassing.
Did you know Viggo Mortensen broke his toe when he kicked that helmet?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it was...
So ahead of time, beforehand, before we start, this is 100% spoilers about the book, the show,
everything. Yeah.
You will.
Oh, absolutely.
Unless you want to hear everything, turn back now.
I will say this. I think we should do a 30-second to 1 minute of us saying what our spoiler-free opinion is of should people go and watch the show.
Yeah.
But before we do that, what I want to do is...
Are you going to try to persuade us one way or the other first?
Not at all. Not at all. But what I want to say is, what is each of our history with the book series?
Right, because that
That's
matters. That's
important to this.
Yeah.
It's a big part of it.
So, Ken, what is your history with the Wheel of Time?
So you, after much belabored nagging, talked me into reading this sometime probably 10 years ago.
Sounds about right.
And I read book 1, thought it was great. And somewhere around book 4 or 5, I gave up halfway through. It just went on too long for me.
You were reading.
You made
reading.
Okay.
Yeah, reading the
books. You made it really far. You were deep into it. If you're in book 4,
they're not short.
There's a lot of stuff going on.
Well, I think that was part of it. It was just exponentially expanding. And anytime you thought you were going to get some closure on something, it was like, nope, we're going to another dimension. And I don't know if but the point is, read a few of them probably 10 years ago and really don't remember any of it. I know I dropped it, right? So that says something, but I think the first book is fantastic. Not a lot of connection to it.
Yeah.
Though.
The first book is much faster paced, I feel like, than the rest of the series is.
Yeah.
It's really an attention grabber. It's a great book.
First book. Go read the first book.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's quite short by comparison as well. Probably no coincidence that it's fastest and shortest, but
yeah.
Now what about you, Emily?
So I listened to all the books.
All the audiobooks?
All the audiobooks. I got through the whole series, but I think I started it. Liv was a baby, so 10 years ago, because I specifically remember driving from Michigan to Minnesota, and she's 6 months old in the back.
You can listen to whatever you want, yeah.
Yeah, and I was like, we have a 6-7 hour drive. Let's do this. So I was listening. So I listened to all of them, but I never read them.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I see names all of a sudden, I'm like, who the heck is that? And I'm like, oh, it's Nynaeve. Never would I have.
That's how you spell that?
Yeah.
What?
Or Aes Sedai. Never would I have.
Yeah, what does that look like?
I would have
paper?
said it in my head weird until someone told me.
What is it A-E?
It's AESSEDAI.
Right, there's an S on the I.
It's 2 words.
Yeah, it's Aes Sedai, yeah.
Where I feel like I would have just kind of skimmed over it while you just kind of make up a word in your head for a second. But so I remember things, but I also don't remember great detail because it's been a while.
Yeah.
Well, you're not one to discuss as much, right? You listen to the entire series, but I don't. It's not like we've ever sat down and talked about this character, that character,
maybe
this
a
event.
little. It would be me coming in the house after walking a dog and being like, "Are you kidding me?" when I like take out my headphones and then saying a couple things.
Right, but for us both
But-
having gone through the whole series, your experience with it is sort of a mystery to me. I don't even know if you liked it or not.
Well, I listened to all of it. I mean, I
That says
obviously liked it
something, right?
enough.
Yeah.
Well, and that's the thing is like, it's always hard to recommend the series to somebody.
Yeah.
When it was recommended to me, it was from a friend of mine, and he had read the first 2 or 3 books, which are a wild ride, right?
Those are
they're
good.
very fast. They're very
Yeah.
good.
I would
And
say
he
the
was like-
first 3 are pretty strong.
He's
Yeah.
like, you got to read these, and I was like, okay. But if you read the whole series, and somebody asks, should I read The Wheel of Time? You're like,
Like, are you
Oh,
ready?
no, man.
Yeah. Well, wait. How
So-
old were you though?
I'm 35 now, and I started reading The Wheel of Time when I was 14.
That's
Wow.
So
Well, and
I
that's-
was a freshman in high school,
That's a
or
different
just before.
experience.
A friend of mine said, "Hey, I've read the first 3 of these
Yeah.
books." So this was like 1999, 2000. The first book came out in 1990, I think.
It was 1990. I looked it
Wow.
up.
Okay.
So they're 10 years old at that point. The 7th book was just about to come out
That's pretty
so
good.
when I
you had-
started reading them.
Yeah, it's a good spot to be in.
And so, or the 7th book had just come out, and it was like me and my friend Jordan and my friend Kyle, and Jordan got us into it, and we all read them, and we all talked about them. We played the only Dungeons and Dragons I played as a teenager was using Advanced Dungeons and Dragons rules to play in a Wheel of Time based game.
Sweet. Sweet.
Ooh.
Yeah,
I'd play that.
it was a lot of fun. I remember Jordan would run those games. But so I started reading them when I was 14. And I had read a little bit of fantasy before that. Like I tried to read Lord of the Rings. I had read like The Sword of Shannara or something like that in middle school. They're like this book series I don't remember anything about. And this was the first time I was like,
Some
they
real
were a
deal-
couple years, Rand and Matt and Perrin are a couple years older than I was at the
Right.
time.
Yeah, that's true.
And it's like those are your formative years, right? And this is a book
what I was
series
gonna
that
say.
took 10
Yeah.
years to read,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and it was over the course of like when I was growing up. So it's not even like, do I think this book series is great or do I like it or whatever? It's like this book series is a part of
Right, it's
me
totally
growing
different.
up.
It's like a
It's
childhood.
sentimental value,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, it's like very nostalgic.
yeah.
Because I have read all the books, and then before I found out that there was podcasts, I was like pirating the audiobooks because audiobooks are expensive in
They
college.
are actually.
They are.
I've
But
now
very
begun to
good.
purchase them all, but so I have read all the books. I have also listened to all the books except the
Crazy.
last one.
You never
Wow.
listened to the last
I never
one?
listened to the last one. I read
Really?
it. Mm-hmm.
That's weird. That
Wow.
I have, like, I don't know. That
Yeah.
feels weird that I have and you haven't.
Now, the big mistake I made was it had been a while, right? And so I went out and purchased the Eye of the World, the first book, on audiobook, and I listened to all 29 hours of it leading up to the release of the show.
Oh,
So
man.
You shouldn't have done
that is the
Yeah.
third or fourth time I've been through that book. I have the first book memorized, essentially, beat for beat, scene for scene, and then I turn on the TV show.
Right. Bad
It
call.
is.
That was a stupid idea.
No.
Yeah.
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 All
So
right,
spoiler time.
spoiler
Yeah.
free. Spoiler free.
Wait,
Oh,
spo-
so- okay.
3 episodes in, if you're generally like TV shows or like fantasy
Yeah.
or high fantasy stuff, is this something to check out?
Well, it's
think?
interesting that you mentioned that because it's like, how many high fantasy shows do you really get? So it's like,
Not
well,
too
if
many
that's your
nowadays.
thing, this is probably all you're going to get for a while, right?
Yeah.
That's
I don't
true.
know. I don't know. What do you think?
I would. It is tricky to be like, well, if you don't know, I think it's a really interesting, like, world to all of a sudden learn about. So I would say if you like fantasy, if you liked Lord of the Rings, like Ben's mom was saying how she thought it was similar.
It's got
Um,
pretty distinct Lord of the Rings and Game of Thrones.
yeah.
Like
So
they're clearly borrowing. There's a lot of
Yes.
Lord of the Rings influence here.
like it's
Especially in that first book.
it's very much
Yes.
like the orcs are like
And the
the
first
Trollocs,
episode.
and
Yep.
the fades are like like they have the similar like if
Right.
you like that, I think if you haven't read the books, you would still like watching this, especially if you haven't read the
You
books.
could
You would
very
like it.
easily mistake the first book and these first
Yeah.
episode or two for Lord of the Rings. Like
You know-
you'd be
Yeah.
like, this
Right.
is the same
You're
thing.
like, did they just get to the ferry? Like, it's the
Right.
same.
Well, it's
Yeah.
interesting. This is a lot like if you're not familiar with the source material at all, it's a lot like what's that show that had the Black Void in the middle
Black
of the
Void.
country, and they would have to take ships through that sand.
Oh,
Oh,
Shadowbone.
Shadowbone. This is a lot
Shadow
like
and Bone.
it kind of starts out a lot like Shadow
Really?
and Bone. Right? There's magic.
It is kind of
There's
yeah.
Like countries that you don't know the
It's-
names
Yeah,
of.
you trying to learn about
There's
the different
weird
worlds.
bad guys.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't know what's going on. And I don't know where Shadow and Bone goes. Like I don't know the source material at
You should
all.
try
I didn't like go look
Well,
it
see,
up.
that's the thing. I enjoyed that because it was like a fantasy. All of a sudden, we're going to learn about a new world, like trying to figure out that world and map. I'd never read the books. If I'd read the books, I might be like, this is really
Yeah.
stupid because it's
Yeah.
not the same. So if I like that and didn't read the books, if you like that same style, I feel like you would like this.
Yeah.
So
This is gonna
I can see that.
Really?
and knowing how much there is to pull from.
Well, there's a lot of
Knowing how much there is, how many places it can go, and episode 3 of the first 3 premiere, the 1, 2, 3 premiere, where episode 3 gave everybody a little more room to breathe and some stories to develop. I feel like
Yeah.
if the show is going to be
Yeah.
more like that,
Yeah.
then this is going to be great.
yeah.
I think if you read them or not, I think you should watch it. Here, let me put it this way: if you read them, I think you should watch it just because this is probably the only time you're ever going to see it. Right?
This is it,
Yeah.
baby.
You can't adapt these books as movies,
It would be
and
no.
insane.
optimistically, you're not going to get past 8 seasons here, so you're going to get the condensed version anyway.
Yeah, right.
So, as someone who hasn't read it, you could probably watch this and more or less get a good experience, assuming they go 8 seasons, right? You're not gonna. I mean, it needs 30 seasons in reality,
Right?
but
no.
you're not gonna get that. So we're left with what we have, I guess. So
Right?
try to just enjoy it.
I think to
I
end
feel
it,
like I'm defending it,
right.
and I don't want to defend it.
to end the spoiler-free discussion, I
Yeah.
think that the first 2 episodes kind of leave you a little bit flat, and the third episode feels like there's a lot to promise, a lot of
Yes.
promise there, and so it makes me go, we'll watch and see.
Yeah.
There's 5 more episodes in this first season.
That's it. Wow.
It can it really
know.
grow to something better? It feels like it can, because
Yeah.
it certainly didn't feel like it started off on a good foot.
Kind of. Emily, do you have any non-spoiler additions to make before we?
I don't think so. Just I mean, if you like fantasy, I feel like this is
Yeah.
a good show.
It's
The
something
only
to watch.
thing is, I mean, it's not family friendly. Like you're
No.
not gonna have kids there.
No, it's
it-
R-rated,
Yeah, so there is that. Where when I
which I wasn't
remember
expecting.
the
The
books,
books are not
are
that
not
way.
like graphic. They
Right.
don't describe things. So all of a
Right.
sudden that was a little bit of a like
Yeah.
But I think it's still like if you like Game of Thrones, Lord of the Rings, any of like,
Yeah.
then you'll probably like this.
Yeah.
All right. If you haven't watched this, if you don't want spoilers, turn this off right now.
Leave now.
Why
Because
are you
the
even here?
spoilers
Yeah, you
Please
should have
leave.
known
let
better.
the spoilers begin.
Okay.
I have so much to say, and I don't know where to
You take
start.
out like a stack of papers.
Right.
And I think the best way to start this off is I saw a Reddit post where somebody
Uh-oh.
said, once I got over the shock of watching it the first time,
Yeah.
I went and rewatched it and had
Oh.
a much better experience.
That
Was
probably-
this from
that makes
a-
sense.
From a seasoned vet of the material.
Yes.
Okay, that makes
Because
sense.
Was
this
it you?
show does not follow the books
No.
at all as far as scene for scene.
Not
right.
Not sequentially, right?
There
Nope.
are no
Yeah.
scenes that occur in the book that have yet to have occurred in the show.
So it still gets like from A
Well,
to B, but it's like someone took a little
yeah,
maze. Like the overall story's the
The
same.
story is the
Oh, yeah.
overall story is happening the same way.
It doesn't like
but
totally
scene
change
for
things.
scene, any like actual scenes from the book, not one scene in the show happened in the books.
Yeah,
not one
they
single
get
one.
from A to B in a different way
so?
than the book does. So it's
Huh.
it's
I
always
know
slightly
so.
different. Yeah,
I'm trying to remember. Yeah,
trust me.
Shouldn't
But-
question.
So the whole
Are you
first,
sure?
the first, and when the first episode ended, I was like, "What?"
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like because I just kept expecting like all these things to happen that never did. Like
It's
they're
only
so
an hour, though, right? I mean, it's
right, but you would have thought like they would take certain things and then cut others out or shorten them down, but instead it's so different. Is
Yeah.
like it's like a completely different.
yeah.
I thought they would take a
story.
little more time, and instead they really just
Right.
like rushed
They
right in.
they put the gas pedal down,
Mhm.
right? And it bothers me. It's so typical of stuff where it's like first episode, gotta have crazy action, gotta get some boobs in there, gotta have a bunch of blood, we gotta hit all these like pilot
Right.
test episode check marks. I don't think there's nudity in this, but
Not really.
they
But there's lots of
definitely
blood.
there's plenty of, but I thought it was used well, and I'm not someone who likes.
I wish it was like a little
gratuitous-
less. I
There
feel like
was a
they were
couple
trying
scenes where they overdid it. Yeah,
trying to be like Game of Thrones had a lot, and I just want to be
Right.
like, yeah, that's why I didn't enjoy Game of Thrones, just
Right.
because I wish it like knocked
Right.
it down a little bit.
Well,
I mean, it wasn't to Game of Thrones. Like if you watch that and you're like, yikes, it's not nearly.
no, it's not even
to that.
half
Not-
that.
But I just feel like they were like, well, that did good, so we'll take
Yeah.
a little.
Oh,
of this, and
definitely.
this did good,
Yeah.
and we'll take a little. Of
The
this.
Well, right, there-
inspiration from Lord of the Rings and Game of Thrones is very apparent.
Yeah.
They're like, I mean, and some of the times it's great. Like the Trollocs in the first episode look fantastic.
yeah, I
Mhm.
agree.
They
To
get
actually
worse
see a
in some of the
Trolloc on
other-
screen, but yeah, to
Mhm.
see a Trolloc on screen and be
It's
like, ah,
looks
ah,"
great, gross.
like that's exactly what it should look like,
Yeah,
and
right.
I hate
Yeah.
it.
Yeah,
I hate it.
It's gross and
It is.
yeah. I mean, I don't even know how to talk about it though, because what
I think-
happens in the first book starts with basic. It's very slow. Rand is
well, and that's
his
the
dad.
thing, right? Like, we can talk about this in so many different ways, but like, if we want to talk about like why are fans of the books having such a hard time with the show, I
Sure.
think there's a lot of different reasons, right? Like,
yeah.
Brandon Sanderson, I read a couple of things that Brandon Sanderson said. So he's an executive producer on the show, and he's
Oh,
really
wow.
been like a major consultant
Good
for the
for
show. He
him.
didn't write
Which is
it.
good though.
He the writer is like the main show creator. I
Yeah.
don't have his name down.
It's
Uh,
some yeah.
Right,
Forget it.
Rafe or something like that.
Yeah.
It was some dude who was on Survivor.
Really?
Yeah, which is
Wow.
like
Yeah.
weird.
But he's like consulted a lot on like, here's actually what you should probably change in this scene to get the way that
Okay.
this character feels right. And he was talking about how at first he was having a really hard time with none of the book scenes are in the show. Like it's completely different. And then he thought about it and he was like, he's actually said he was working on doing the same thing for Mistborn, like a screen adaptation of the Mistborn
Yeah.
series. And he wrote it one way where it was like honest to the books, and one
Yeah.
way where it was like, I'm going to completely rewrite it for the screen, but with the same larger
Yeah.
story,
Arcs,
right?
Yeah.
Character arcs,
Mhm.
And it has none of the
themes
same scenes, but all the same characters and this and that. And he was like, you know what? It works a lot better on the screen this way.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm
And
sure,
he's
yeah.
not wrong.
Yeah.
He's absolutely right. You know, and he's like, the way to think about this TV series is it's a new turning of the wheel for the same characters. So
There you go.
you know, the events of the book was one time the Third Age happened, and maybe now we're another time around the wheel of time, and the Third Age has come again with the same people reborn, doing similar events but in a different way. And it's like, okay, if you think about it that way, then
cool.
like, and I read
Yeah.
that before I watched the third episode, and then going into the third episode, I was like, I was finally watching it like a TV show because
Yeah, you weren't critiquing.
Yeah.
I
it
finally
for-
realized
yeah.
I don't know what's going to happen next. Even though I
Right.
have this whole book
Right.
memorized, I don't actually know what's going to happen next. And all of
Yeah.
a sudden, when Rand and Matt are in that mining town,
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know what's going to happen here.
Yeah.
Which I mean, if it was exactly like the book, you'd probably be disappointed because
You'd be
you'd be
bored.
like, okay, this is the part. Yeah, this is the part when this is
Yeah,
about to
maybe
happen.
it would get old.
and
Maybe
you'd probably
you're
be
right.
like, yeah, I know it's about to happen. This way, it's like you said, you still get from A to B. You're just taking a different, route
Right.
around the way.
Well,
so
like Moraine being hurt. All of us are like, what's going to happen? Because Moraine doesn't get hurt in the book.
I couldn't even remember. I thought she did, but
Nope, she
no?
doesn't.
Okay.
Actually, so Nynaeve catches up to the whole party when they're in Baerlon, which is like the first town they get to,
yeah,
Okay,
and there's a bit of
yeah.
a respite.
they haven't done.
There's the like run from Edmundsfield and across the river in the beginning. It's the beginning of the Lord of the Rings, escape from the Black
yeah.
Riders across the Brandywine. It's exactly the same thing.
Yeah, get on
Yeah.
the ferry.
Then they get to Baerlon, and there's a bit of a respite, and the story expands a little bit. You get introduced to White Cloaks. Nynaeve shows up, and the party's like a little bit bigger. And the TV show's not like that at all, right? So like Moraine's hurt, and it's a different story, and I need to like approach it.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, it's
Like that.
probably better that they took that approach. I mean, you would be, because if you try to do it shot for shot and stuff, then you can really nitpick. Here,
Yeah,
it's more
right.
like, well, you're just going to have to either get on board or
Mhm.
go read the books again. You know?
Yeah.
Right. I think it takes fans of the books or people really familiar with the source material. It's going to take a few episodes to be like, oh, this is a different story. And I need to watch it like a TV show where I'm not knowing what's going to happen. I'm intrigued at
Yeah.
what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, if it was the whole time shot for shot, then it would constantly be criticized for why'd you leave that out? Why'd you put this
Right.
in and leave that out? Or why did you do
Right.
this that way and not this? And instead,
Right.
I'm
yeah.
not kidding. That like there is no scene in the show that is in the book yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a few things that I think is kind of weird at first, but like you said, if you look at it in a different perspective, like it's the same overall, but I think it will be more interesting to them be like, oh my gosh, if something happens all of a sudden, compared to being like, oh, there's a part where like Min is gonna, you just kind of like sit there
Right.
watching like a play
you
that
already
you know
know,
happened.
yeah.
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 So
And, yeah, and it's different. Like it is a different thing. That is the hardest thing for me to get over. Is that it's a different thing. You
Yeah.
know, and the show creator was saying, so Wheel of Time really becomes sort of an ensemble piece, right? Like later on, there are 148 point of
Oh my
views
gosh.
in the
Holy
book series.
Oh my gosh.
makes sense.
The
though.
first book is almost all Rand. It's it's the whole beginning is Rand. It switches when they get split up between Rand and Perrin.
Yeah.
And then when
That's
they're
right.
back together, it's just Rand. There's a little bit one time I think where it's Nynaeve.
I was gonna say it's a girl like for a short time.
It's Nynaeve I think for one chapter,
Okay.
and then it's Rand the whole rest of the book. And so you really
It
get
works
to like
better
know
that
him.
way. Yeah, it works better that way too.
There's all kinds of foreshadowing about like when Rand is with Tam on Winter Night, dragging him back to town, and him talking about finding a baby on Dragon Mount, and they get to Baerlon, and
Yeah,
he meets
he's, like,
Min, and Min is
talking.
like telling him how Egwene's not meant for him because Min has foreseen that actually Rand and her get together, and she doesn't know how to deal with that, so she's like hanging around Rand in a weird way, and she's telling Moraine everything's there's all this stuff that doesn't happen in the show at all. Also, Tom's with them the whole time.
But it works better in the show by not doing that because you don't have first person
Yeah.
viewpoint, right? You're with the group. Everybody's sort of, and they're really leaning into who's the dragon. And,
Right.
if you know across
Yes.
the 3 episodes, they go way overboard, making Perrin and Matt like complicated up front
Yeah.
Yeah.
so
Yep.
that they are, and same with Egwene, apparent contenders to maybe be the dragon, whereas Rand is probably the least served of the 4
Right.
in those episodes.
Mm-hmm.
He basically is just there. And that's obvious. I mean, to me, that's obvious that they're like, well, it's the boring guy. And you'll get
Yeah.
him later, I think. You'll get more from him later. But
Yeah,
up front,
that is true.
I mean, the first 5 books are about Rand.
Yeah.
And maybe
very
in book
obvious,
5 it
yeah.
starts to switch a little bit. more towards Matt, and Perrin comes later. But the first 3 books are just about Rand, and then the 4th book is mainly about Rand becoming He Who Comes with the Dawn, the Karakarn, blah 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 blah. But then Matt gets all of his superpowers at the end of book 4, and all of a sudden, like, Matt's really cool. Right? So then the series for a while there becomes about Rand and Matt, and then Perrin sort of he gets his big stories towards the end of the series, and Egwene does too and stuff. But yeah, you're right. They're like it's like Rand's story in the beginning, and this isn't Rand's story at all. It's like
Right.
it's almost like you're if somebody was like you were watching the story unfold instead of experiencing the story through Rand, which is how the books are.
Right.
Yeah, like if we didn't tell your mom, she wouldn't have known who it's gonna be so far.
Oh,
Because like
no.
of course your like dad said things and then your mom like moved over to me and she was like, "Who's the dragon?" Like she's whispering
Right.
to me and I was like, "Him." Like I had to really quick, but
I
I mean
wonder
she
if
had
they-
no idea. Like she wouldn't have been like, "Oh, it must be this kid," you know. Because as far as she knows, there's just like 4 kids coming on the journey and
Yeah.
you don't really know what's going on yet.
Right? Egwene like starts a fire with the power.
That's I
Didn't-
just I
When
just
she's
wish
with
they
Perrin.
didn't rush. I understand like with TV shows, there's budgets and this and that. And I'm sure like ratings for the
Yeah.
first so many shows and blah blah blah.
Right.
But I wish
yeah.
they didn't have to rush the first 2 episodes so much because I feel like they missed. It doesn't have to be just like the books, but they missed so much of this. Like, hold on, how come she already knows how to do this and that and like all these little things that in the book it's like, well, it's been like 6 weeks and they've been working together
But I think
on like. I just wish
you-
they had like a little bit more of that.
But you're right though. It's got to get strong numbers up front, right?
Yeah.
And then
So it's like action.
sometime in
like-
season 2, we get flashbacks to Nynaeve and
Mhm.
Egwene and all this, like, you know,
Yeah.
because they even moved through the braid thing, and I'm like, what is this? I don't remember. Like, I didn't even
Yeah, right. Everything's
remember
kind of shoved at you.
like
quick.
how the woman thing works and like the magic and stuff. And they're like, well, we're gonna leave it mysterious to a certain degree.
Yeah, right.
If we want to explain it later, we can, if we have the budget to do that and the freedom to do it. But
Yeah, I think that's the main thing. But like you said, the 3rd episode then was much more like, okay, everybody's
It
separate. We can kind of
slows
focus.
down. Yeah.
So then it was a little bit better. I just wish we had a little bit more at the beginning of like, here's our home life normally. And
Yeah, I
but-
agree.
It's
I mean,
interesting.
You
Oh,
can
go ahead,
have
Kevin.
that episode. Sorry, you can have that episode, right? You have
Yeah, they'll just do like you said, they'll
Once
do a
you're to-
flashback. of-
Rand's alone. He's going mad a little bit, and you'll get a whole episode of him doing what Ben was talking about, right? Like,
Yeah.
there's like chapters and chapters in that first book that I remember of him like just being out in the field,
Mhm.
and you spend so much time with him
Yeah.
and the
that's
dad
true.
in particular. where,
Right.
like, you'll get that later, I think.
That
I
is
hope.
true. They probably will do
Well,
that
and
cut back.
That
Yeah.
was the thing of like, so the show opens up with
How
like
does it start?
the town's getting attacked, right? And everybody's like trying to deal. It's a big action sequence.
Yeah,
The
very
Trollocs are
long.
attacking. It's like all over the place. In the book opens with it's like much slower, right? Rand and Tam, his father, are walking towards town with apple cider and apple brandy. They're going to deliver to town. Rand thinks he sees a black rider up ahead, and he looks again, and he's gone, right? And there's just sort of this mystery, and like Winter's hanging on for some weird reason. He gets
Yeah.
to town. You have this like nice little scene where Matt's trying to get out of having to do any work, but Tam's like, "Oh, hey Matt, nice you to show up. Thanks for helping us unload the casks."
Yeah.
You know, and he like can't get out of it.
Yeah, it's that slow.
But they
medium
get like some
characters.
honey buns or something like that from Egwene's mom at the inn and like all this stuff. And then you meet all the friends, and they're kids, right? They're like 18 or 17 or 18 or whatever. They're like kids, and it's from Rand's perspective, and and Robert Jordan does a really good job that whole first book of making you feel like what would a teenager be like with his friends, and then what's a teenager going to be like when all of a sudden £1,000,000 of responsibility is trying to be dropped onto him, and he's trying to get
Yeah.
out of it.
Yeah.
Right. That and it's from his point of view. So you go home and all of a sudden, like, like they get attacked, right? And all of a sudden, Tam kills 3 Trollocs. Like, why is he a good sword fighter? He's a farmer. Rand's super confused. He has to go hide in the woods, and he's like sneaking around. And it's like you can feel what it would be like. Like, you know that feeling of like you're trying to hold your breath to not make any sound in the woods, and he's just staring at all the shadows in the field to be like, is that a Trolloc? Is that a Trolloc? Is that a Trolloc? And he's like hiding out there. And then he sneaks back into the house, and there's 4 dead Trollocs, and he's like, oh man, but one of them's not dead, and it like jumps at him and it gets killed, but then the Tam's hurt and he has to drag him through the woods all night back to town.
But if you had never read the book and this was the first episode of something, would you be like, why would you be like, this is too slow, I don't even know what the heck is going on?
Yeah.
So that's
You're absolutely right. But to have that, like, now all of a sudden you're so bonded with Rand. Like, you've gone through this struggle with him. And he gets town is salvation. When I get Tam to town, Nynaeve's going to heal him. Everything's going to be better. And he gets to town, and half the town's freaking destroyed. Except it's not really, because only Rand's house got attacked, Matt's house got attacked, Perrin's farmhouse got attacked, and the forge got attacked. Those are the only places. But all the Trollocs are dead because Moiraine didn't, like in the show, it's like a hard fight.
Yeah.
In the book, Moiraine just like lightnings them all or whatever. Like just kill Moiraine and Lan, kill them, and all the townspeople are like, I don't know, they took care of all of them.
Crazy.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised that she was like really tough for her.
Well, the first book is like the pilot to a TV show. You know how like in the pilot you can tell they filmed it, and then they got funding later and made the rest of the show, and you're like, it's like different.
Yeah.
Like the characters sound. The first book is like that. Like the magic is kind of soft, like very Lord of the Ringsy, where you're like, I'm not sure what you can and can't do.
Right.
Like, there's a bunch of weird stuff. Like when they're in Baerlon, Moiraine makes herself look 30 feet tall and steps over the wall. And like, how did she do that? Like, you know, because how they would do that later, the magic system gets really like a hard magic system later.
Yeah.
These are the rules. There's the 5 elements. You weave them like this. This person is this strong. This person is this strong. This person can do 1 weave. Rand can do 8,000 weaves because he's as strong as somebody can be with the power. And there's all this stuff. But like in the beginning, there's like no rules. There's like weird stuff happening all the time.
Yeah, it is like really weird
the whole
at
like the
first.
fight at the end of the first book where it's like you can't even tell what's happening,
still
and there's
don't
like
know what
weird
happened there.
black cords going off out of the Forsaken that he like cuts off. Like what's even going on with that?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I
You
don't
can't
know.
even tell. Like Agenor burns himself out because he can't handle as much power as there is in the Eye of the World, but Rand
Like-
can because he's at Luce Theron and he's super powerful channeler.
That
like,
is after the end of the first book, I was like, I'm sorry, what? And it's
Yeah.
just like they're like hanging out by a tree or whatever, and I was like, I'm sorry,
Super
did
weird.
we just fight? Like I don't quite understand what
So
just happened.
even the first book is not like the rest of the series where like he was like,
Yeah.
oh, now he starts to nail things down. This is
Right.
how the system works. These are the rules of it. And in the show so far, it's like very much like, I don't know what's going on. Like
Shit's
there's
getting
some like white
crazy.
stuff floating around, and sometimes there's lightning, and sometimes there's fire, and
And I was not thrilled with the way it looked most of
Yes.
the time.
I also agree.
well, I also think what we shouldn't be able to see the weaves. Like it's a big
Which
thing in
I
Is
the
that
think
what
books
they're
that is
trying to
supposed to
show,
be?
I think
but
the white
Yeah.
stuff is the weaves.
I
I
don't
want to be like,
it.
I've seen shows do this a little better, and I just
Yeah.
for all the hype, I want to be like, why is it so floaty, misty? I don't. I
Right.
didn't.
And something about the speed of it was like it
Yeah,
was
it
like
kept, like-
really slow.
It was slow, and then it would be like fast, and I just didn't. Something didn't work. Which I'm hoping maybe they'll get funding,
Maybe
and
they'll
And then
fix
it'll
it.
like they'll up it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that at first when she first did it, I was like, "Oh gosh, is this what we're gonna be doing the whole time?"
Well,
Yeah.
the whole first episode, I was like, when's this going to happen? When's this going to happen? When's this going to happen? The whole second episode, I was like, why are they here already? What happened to this? Why didn't this
you were
happen?
like, "I guess we're not gonna meet Tom."
yeah,
like, you were
like
just
what's
so
going on here? How are they in
pissed.
Shadow Logoth already? They didn't even go to Baerlon. Like, what's going on here?
Yeah.
And then I got to the third episode.
And things are starting to kind of like form a little more though. Like where in the second you were like, "They're supposed to know Tom by now," and the third I was like, "See, they get
Well,
to
and
Tom."
even
slow
not
down.
remembering a lot of the book, episode 2 I didn't like. It was like
I don't even remember episode 2 really.
I don't even all I remember is the spooky city. I don't remember
Yeah.
much more to it than that. And
Right?
I feel like the first 2 episodes were just a setup for like
it's just to get it moving.
just to
I
get it
think.
going. The third kind of really started going, and now I'm actually interested to be like, okay,
Yeah,
now
Like,
what
I
are we
want to
doing?
know like Nynaeve is back and I like whoever like she's cool. I like her.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're split up. The wolves chasing Perrin and Egwene got a little weird at one point. They were like lost inside of like
A field? I don't know.
bramble.
It was kind of weird.
It was like look where you're going. They're just running in circles
And
and
also,
stuff.
like, at first when, like, Rand and Matt are up on the mountain and they're like, I want to be like, this is where you went after you got out of the water? Like,
Right.
straight? I don't know. And they're like, I don't see anyone. I want to be like, well, why are you up here? Like,
Yeah.
you're not, you didn't
Yeah.
even attempt to
Well,
find
I
someone.
saw an
don't know.
interesting theory. I only went to Reddit to do some research actually for the podcast. Oh, hey, Joe says hi. Hey, Joe, how's it going? Thanks for tuning
sorry, I'm
in.
in the room.
I hope you're not being spoiled too much by the Wheel of talking about the Wheel
I,
of Time.
I
here.
put
We
on
need a big
Instagram really
spoiler
quick
banner.
because I was afraid if someone, like,
Jumps
was like,
on.
oh, and they
Spoiler
jumped
city.
on, they're like, I don't want to be
Right.
hearing this.
You're ruining this
So
for
I
me.
said only join if it's going to be Wheel of Time spoilers. So
Yeah.
But I saw an interesting theory as I was perusing through the subreddit, because the nice thing about on the subreddit, there's a bunch of stuff on there from Brandon Sanderson, and I liked reading Brandon Sanderson's thoughts
That's nice.
because he sounded like he was having the same struggles that we were. This isn't like the books at all.
I bet
And
his phone is just blowing.
And he was
up
like,
these
I
past few
I
days."
have to come to terms with the fact that this is a different story, and so that's how I'm treating it in my head. It's a new turning of the wheel. It's different people or whatever. He also mentioned how if you follow point for point the books, you get Harry Potter 1 and 2, which are kind of slow moving, and they're way more boring as a movie than like
Yeah.
movie number 3 is probably one of the best ones, and they're like really action packed after that, and they start to divert more and more from the books to make it more of a movie, and I think you get better movies that way as
Yeah.
long as you can accept that the books and the movies are two different things.
Yeah.
And when they tried to make the movies the book, but the thing is, I like the first two
I
Harry
know.
Potter movies.
I always have trouble because I'm like, I really like number 1.
Because
so
I
it's
just
kinda my-
like I like that sort of like, let me just live in this world with you. Let me just be
Yeah.
in this place with you.
But I also like the others, so I can't.
Yeah, but the others are better
Yeah.
movies. So I don't know. I mean, I really think like people are very familiar with the books are having a hard time with the show because it's not like the books. And
Yeah.
it's not like the books in two ways. It's first of all like different events are happening, but tonally it's also different. It's not
Yeah.
from
Yeah.
what is a teenager's perspective of being thrust into this situation and
No.
like going on a ride with them through all this. Instead, it's like point for point these like events, you know.
But
And-
it's also like the people. Well, what I'm thinking, because I'm thinking of you, the people who have read the books, because like you said, they were. I wrote down published in 1990 until 2013. That is a huge
Wow.
span where if you actually read them or listened, like this, like you said, you grew up with them. Like this is
Yeah.
part of your life. This is a huge chunk of time. It's not like even Harry Potter was like, yeah, it was a good like 5 years. Whatever like span of time. This though, the people who know it, they know it because it was like, no, we had years and like 20 years to really take this in. So
Right.
that they are like very high critiques, to try to pass.
Exactly. And it's 14 very long books
Yeah.
that have been with me for longer than they weren't. Right? These books have been with me longer in my life than they were not.
Yeah.
I know
So
the
that's
main
why.
characters as well as I know anybody.
Yeah.
And so to see them be different people is hard to come to terms with. And I feel like I
Yeah.
finally did, because the third episode is so much better than the first two. And you get to see like
You're
that-
finally letting go
like
a little bit.
the whole Rand and Matt story that happens in that mining village and how they meet Tom and like Tom and
It's
Matt's
great.
interaction and then the interaction with the dark friend. That was that was fantastic.
She might be one of the best actors in this show so far. Like I
Oh,
was
yeah.
watching her she was, because the acting is so for some of them.
Yeah, which I'm also. I hope that they like get more into
They'll
their
come into it.
characters and yeah.
Mhm.
Like I'm trying to think of a specific example. Actually, I thought Tom was a little
Oh, he was a little more rock and roll than I thought.
well.
If
you
that
know,
makes
it
sense.
really wasn't his. it wasn't his acting. The problem was that like you immediately knew, oh, here's a main character, right?
Yeah,
Like he showed
that's
up
true.
and like his clothes were cleaner and he had colors that you haven't like he's got a red scarf or whatever.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it was kind of like it's like a cutscene from a video game sometimes.
It
where
was a
it's-
little bit like his introduction, and
That's
and
fine.
it was like,
yeah. All of a sudden,
this
his
is-
song, I was like,
it's
this
like
is
heavy-
a little cringy.
it was like heavy-handed for a character introduction,
Yeah.
which was really weird because he's supposed to be like sleight of hand and sly and all these sorts of things. And I don't know, that was a weird one. But that episode is much better because it slows down. You
Mhm.
finally get people
Right.
like, and you get what's her name? I like Nynaeve shows up, and the guy who does Tall Man. Who's Tall Man?
Lan,
Lan.
Yeah,
Lan Mandragoran, last king of the Malkiri,
I
king of
think
the
he's
Seven
good.
Towers.
I was gonna say I kind
He's
of wanted
good,
to
he's
hear
good.
your thoughts, Ben, on like,
yeah. Run through them real quick.
do you think Rand is gonna be a good Rand?
Do I think Rand is going to be a good Rand? I do.
I feel
actually.
like
I
he's
think
pretty
so.
good.
He's
as a-
pretty.
He seems just like the kind of person who will like be afraid of power, and then he'll get power, and then he'll think
Yeah.
he has to get too hard. You know, like the whole. I
He's
would
got
say.
a good naivety to him. I think.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Which,
Y-
like you were saying, them being like kids is like, because across the main three, Perrin is just kind of like constantly brooding,
Yeah. What?
and Matt is like
That's very
constantly
book-like.
depressed.
Yeah, I know.
Which
Like I don't know what his deal is, but now I know he has the dagger already, and so
Yeah,
it's
which
like,
is-
well, I remember that for some reason, like very keenly,
Yeah.
the dagger thing, and it's like, well, now we haven't seen it for 2 episodes. I hope they show it again because it's what messes
Which
him
I
up,
think they
right?
showed it for like, well, it was.
Oh,
hard
he
to
uses
see
it on
when-
Tom.
He uses it on Tom,
Yeah.
but it's hard to tell that that's what it is,
Right.
which
Yeah.
I'm sure they were doing.
right. And in the first book, he never stabs anybody with the dagger.
Well, see, this is the thing in my mind
What
because
does the dagger
he,
do?
after book,
The dagger is Mordeth
say
from
that.
Shatter Logoth trying to take over Matt. So
yeah, he, like,
Matt is
starts to go
becoming
crazy.
Mordeth.
Yeah.
Right? So there's Mashadar, which is the like fog.
Too many people in these books.
Mashadar
Not
is the
kidding.
fog from Shatter Logoth, that black stuff.
Yeah.
In the
Black.
books, it's like a glowing white fog. Mordeth was like the advisor to the ruler of
Mordeth.
Eredhall. Eredhall became Shatter Logoth. He was that like treasure hunter guy who leads him to the dagger in the books, and then he like turns into a balloon and pops, and
God, that was
Yeah.
Perrin and Matt
weird.
run out of there.
Yeah,
Yep.
it was
Yeah.
weird. I remember that.
It's like a ghost haunting.
Yeah.
Well,
But-
there's so much,
but
and then there's
so
the
Go through
but
you were going to
after
say
book,
go
like-
through the characters though, right? I
But
mean,
after book like 5, Matt gets really interesting, and it kind of goes into him more. And in my mind, I'm thinking of that Matt. So right away, I was
Right.
like, "Geez, they really effed up Matt."
yeah, you're thinking of like cool, funny.
when he's like really
like,
like slick
bow
with the
staff
jokes,
Matt.
and he's
Yeah.
got the staff, and
Yeah.
he's
Yeah.
like really good with stuff, but he doesn't really know why.
He's
And
got
so-
that. It's like a
a
staff
quarter
with
staff,
a big,
isn't it?
but it has a blade on the end of it.
Yeah.
Yep.
But he's good with that, and all of a sudden, he's like really a smart ass, but like everybody kind of loves him.
Right.
And so
Right.
in
Like
my mind,
married to an
Sorta-
empress, but
I'm-
he's like
I'm
doesn't want to.
thinking of this, and then instead he's like mumbly, mean, like depressed Matt, and I was like, what the fuck? But
Yeah.
I'm just thinking of like
Well,
he'll get there.
I
but-
do like they showed that Aiel in the cage, and he kept seeing like a crystal on him, and I kept being like, why would there be
Yeah, what is that
valuables
supposed to
on
be?
this
Right.
Aiel in the cage? And I saw an interesting theory that the dagger is already affecting Matt, that
And
there
that's, like,
isn't
all-
anything valuable on the Aiel. That he's like stealing
Huh.
essentially like nothing, but he keeps seeing everything as like stuff he can take because
Okay.
the dagger is already trying to turn him into
That's- I
Mordeth.
mean, but that's
Because in
what's
my
weird
mind, I
to
was
me.
like, I don't remember, anything related to the Aiel that's like gems, and so that
Yeah.
I
I
was
know,
trying
the-
to remember.
They only
Did you-
find an Aiel in a cage later, and it's Gaul, and I think it's Perrin who finds and releases him,
And
and
he
then Perrin's
releases
friends
him,
with
right?
Gaul for like the whole series.
Yeah. So what do you think about the Perrin actor, guy, whatever you want?
I'll be
I
right back.
I guess didn't picture Perrin quite so like
Yeah, I wish Perrin was like quiet but not moody. right?
He's very like.
And I guess we haven't seen him take off his like jacket or whatever, but you
just
always
pictured
picture him like
I mean, he's
huge.
supposed to be like a blacksmith. He works with iron and like. Yes, this guy's like a bigger guy, but I guess I just pictured him a little bit. I mean, but in the books,
this guy-
he is a big guy, but he's always kind of trying to make himself small
Well,
in the books
but
at
he's
first.
in the books. He's not big because he's naturally big, right? That seems like the actor.
Yeah.
When you see this guy next to Egwene, he is like tall and
He's
broad.
like natural. Yeah.
Perrin in the books is not like tall like Rand. I don't even think he's as tall as Matt, but he's like broad because he's
Because he's been, like, working.
been a blacksmith
Yeah.
for so long.
Where
Like,
this
he's,
guy looks
thick.
like he's naturally just like, yeah, I'm a tall, big guy, but he's trying to make himself small. I think he'll be good though, but
he's certainly
not sure.
brooding enough.
he's very broody.
I don't know. I don't like Perrin so far.
I wanted to ask Ken what he thought about Perrin's, like the beginning of episode 1. Okay. Ken,
All I've said so far is that the Perrin from the show
Sorry.
is like big because he's like tall, and the Perrin from the books I felt like was big because he's a blacksmith.
Because he's wide.
I always had like
Yeah.
a character of a big guy, right? Like a cartoon, like an anime big guy.
Oh, he's got
like
Popeye
like Dragon Ball
forearms.
Z
yeah,
when they go
right.
to
Like he's a big because
Super
he's
Saiyan
been
3.
like all day. But
Yeah,
okay,
but, what
but
are you
right
gonna
away
do?
when they made Perrin, I'm assuming they made him have a wife, and she, big spoiler, dies. Because
Same
they
episode.
want,
Introduced
want-
and killed. They fridged her.
yeah,
Right?
they wanted to make him like immediately super mopey and like I kind of hate myself in a way. But I was like, as soon as they were like, he's married, I want to be like, no, like
Yeah.
something about that
They're
was weird.
I took it as, again, they spent a lot of time on anybody but Rand, right?
Hmm.
And so they're trying to make what's his name, Perrin look animal like, right? He's got like this blood
true.
rage and this sort of like
barbarian.
he's got
But-
this thing that he already has this thing that he can't control, right? Because
That's
the
true.
series starts with a guy running from Aes Sedai because he's used
Yeah.
the power.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
a random male channel.
Just some
Yeah,
random
Chandler,
dude,
yeah.
and they show that he's crazy because he's imagining another person
That's
with
true.
him.
So you could be like, maybe it's him because, yeah.
So that's
that
what I
makes
took it
sense.
as, was like, because they're doing the same thing with Matt. It's like he's gambling and he wants all this
He's,
stuff
like
and
moody and
mopey
like, yeah.
and sad and
But it does work with Matt, where Matt's character goes.
It
It,
does
could
work with
come
Matt.
from this
Right.
place. The gambler, the sort of
Right.
miscreant.
Yeah.
It's not the Matt how Matt starts in the books, but
But-
it could go to the same place easily.
I just thought it was weird for Perrin. They were like, "You're married," and then he goes back to like help her, and she seemed like almost annoyed
Yeah, what
that
was
she's
that
that
about?
married
about? Why
to
was
him.
she
They-
like?
He was like, "I love you," and she's like, "Yeah, I know."
Yeah,
like she
I
seemed
know.
very like,
Thanks or
"Ugh,
something.
God," and I want to be like, "What are you guys like
Chilly.
18 and you're
Did you
already
see her?
pissed?"
Did you see her fighting the Trollocs
Her
though with a
fighting it-
hammer?
She was like
yeah,
Wonder
blowing 'em
Woman,
up.
like,
Yeah.
and he's like
Kicking
trying, and
ass.
she was like, like
Never even
which-
heard of a Trolloc. She's ripping them apart.
I didn't
Right.
quite understand that she was destroying them. He was having trouble, but he really liked her, but she seemed not interested in him, even though they're married. I just want to be like, what is this dynamic? And then I was like, oh, she's dead. Never mind.
doesn't matter. He
Ah,
killed
So
her.
that was
her.
weird. I just thought it was weird that they showed it was almost like trouble in the marriage, but then
Right.
she's dead.
But if you don't think about this as like how weird it was that like
I mean, I
why
guess
was he
if I
married
didn't
and
know
kills
that-
his wife
Right.
like in the book that doesn't
If you
happen.
don't-
But if you think about that
Yeah.
in the show, you're
Okay.
like, oh my gosh, this is horrific for this
Yeah,
guy.
poor guy.
And now he
Yeah.
has to like leave his hometown and he's like on this journey
And
like
everybody keeps talking to him about it, how it's,
It's
not
like,
his
not your
it's not
fault.
your
Yeah.
fault,
Not your
man. He's like,
fault.
well,
It's
I didn't
no,
tell you
it's-
yet, but I killed her.
Yeah, he's gonna
Yeah.
be like, actually,
It is
Right,
my
because-
fault.
that's true.
He's with Egwene, and now he's trying to protect her because he couldn't protect his wife that he killed. And it's like, oh, this makes so much sense.
Which
as
it
a
makes
TV
sense
show.
for how,
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
at first, when you're like, why the hell is Perrin married?
I want to be like,
Yeah.
no. Like right
Like, what's
away, I was
going
like,
on?
no.
Yeah.
Where's Fael come to the picture?
Yeah.
She's got to take on all that baggage.
On that after the dead wife thing. I like the Matt actor and character. I think,
Yeah, he's good.
like you said, at first I was like, they're douching Matt. He's not fun, but he doesn't do that till later. So,
Yeah.
But I think, like, I don't know, he's fine. What about Gwen?
Oh, Joe's asking if you've read the books. We touched on
I
that in the beginning.
I listened to all the books. So I did the audiobooks, but I listened to all
The
of them.
whole series.
The whole
The
series.
whole shebang.
Which
That's gotta
actually,
be
after this, now I'm like, I really
hundreds
want
of
to listen
hours.
to the books again.
It is.
The first
it
book
is
is
hundreds of
29
hours.
hours.
And that's the shortest book.
And that's the shortest one.
Yeah.
Yeah. The last book's
Yeah.
like 3 times that.
Oh my gosh.
I-
One of the chapters in the last book is 200 pages long. One chapter.
It's insane. The last
It-
book is like legit,
Oh,
like a
man.
Bible
It's called
scenario.
The Last Battle, and it's 200 pages long.
It is insane though.
Yeah.
I do like that they did not just do like it is not just a bunch of white people. I like that it is like an actual like society of like there are different people in this.
And it
Yep.
fits.
For once.
It'll
It fits
fit
the book,
really
too.
well, especially when we get to meet Elaine later. That Egwene is dark skinned and dark haired, and Elaine is like light skinned and
they're
blonde.
like yeah.
And like they're so different.
Out of all the changes they made, the fact that Moraine isn't blonde bothers me the most. For I don't know why. I just
But Moraine
should-
isn't blonde.
isn't she in the book?
No, she's dark haired.
What?
Now, Leandrin, that red Aja person we see at the end of episode 3,
Yeah.
that looks just like I
I
thought
swear she-
Leandrin did,
you
with her
know-
pouty mouth.
Yeah, she is like
She's red Aja, but also remember, she's black Aja.
I don't remember what
forgot.
that means.
Oh my
But we'll
gosh.
find out.
it's like you're piecing apart the book for me that I forgot. I need to like I want to re-listen now.
That like red Aja from the very beginning of the first episode,
Well,
who
you
hunts
know
down the
that she's
red
like a
or
dude.
the,
I just don't remember what a
the male
black
channeler.
is. Yeah.
Black is that they're a dark friend Aes Sedai,
Yeah.
and they have to take different oaths. So the Aes Sedai take 3 oaths. They will not use the weapon to
what is
make,
that?
or they will not use the power to make a weapon. They
To
will
hurt
not
someone.
lie, and they will not use the power to hurt somebody except in the last defense of themselves or their warder.
Yeah.
Then, if you're Black Aja, you take the oath rod, remove those 3 oaths because they're binding, like they're by the power. You have to follow the oaths. And I
Yeah.
thought they did a very good job in the TV show
Of
of
showing
talking
Yes.
about the oaths,
Yeah,
and
they
then they
did do
run into
that.
the white cloaks and immediately demonstrate.
They have to show her like, and you can
Right.
see her visibly thinking about like,
Yeah,
here's how
Yeah.
I'm not
She-
gonna lie.
Yeah.
right. Not gonna lie, but it's not gonna be the truth that
It's
you
not
thought
the
you
answer
heard.
that you were
Yeah.
expecting or that you were
Mhm.
looking for.
I thought that
necessarily.
was excellent
was
in the
excellent.
show.
Yeah. That's funny. So was
The,
a Black
the
Aja.
Black Aja, they take different oaths, and it has to do with like, I will
forgot,
not
like, the
betray the Dark One except in the last hour of my death. There's 3 of them. I don't know
But are
what
they
they are.
bad or are they good? Is she
They're-
like a
they're
double
bad guys.
agent?
They're bad
Okay.
guys.
Oh, they're real bad guys.
Yeah.
There's only one
Like,
double
full
agent.
on.
I don't want to ruin the books if somebody's going to read the books, but there is a Black Aja double agent, and she
Okay.
uses that I will not betray the Dark One except in the last hour of my death. To she takes poison, and then she has 1 hour to essentially
like,
tell
destroy?
everybody who all the other Black Aja people are,
Ah.
and like all this stuff.
That's cool.
Yeah, she was like a double agent she was very much like a Snape, where you're like, is this a good guy or a bad guy? Because she's clearly
Snape.
lying, so she's not an Aes Sedai. Like something's
Yeah.
up here.
I think Nynaeve is like
Spot on.
She's
where
awesome.
You're kind of like
She
you're
might
kind
be
of
like-
one of my
bitchy, but
favorite.
I can't
Yeah.
stand you.
Yeah.
That's so naive. That'll never change the whole series. You'll be like, I hate everything about you, but you're
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, you're doing great, but you're kind of annoying when it comes to yeah.
Yeah.
She's super strong in the power. Don't forget.
That's true.
Super strong.
What about Moraine?
I think Moraine's spot on. I think
Yeah.
Moraine's just like Moraine from the book.
I feel like she should be a little more like
Spirited. I felt like
Yeah,
she
like
was more high
something,
energy in the book.
but
Little snappier, little
yeah.
instead of like instead of her coming across as like royal and sort of arrogant, I guess she was a little just less tolerant and faster in the books, I feel
That's
like.
true.
But,
I did,
you
but
know,
one
like it
thing
was
Yep.
like, just quit the bullshit.
Yeah.
We're going, here she's a little more mysterious and
Mm-hmm.
That's true. I wish the one thing from the book I wish would have made it into the show is she makes a whirlpool to sink the ferry. And then later she's like talking to everybody and they're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe she used the power to like sink that ferry. Like she didn't just kill Trollocs. All of a sudden, or protect them. All of a sudden she used the power to like do something that they like thought was like bad.
yeah.
And she was like, listen, The Dark One wants you three. I don't know why, but the Dark One wants you, which means I'm not going to let him have you. And if that means I have to kill you so he can't get you, I will.
Right.
And that's in the book, and they're all like,
I don't remember that.
yeah,
I remember that,
she
yeah.
tells them that, and they're all like,
She's very no nonsense. Like,
right.
Yeah.
All of a
Yeah.
sudden, they're very scared of her. Like, we
Yeah, I
went
wish it
from
was a
she's the
little
great
more of that.
protector
Yep.
to like, I'll kill you
I
if
bet
they're
we'll
going to get you.
that. I bet
That's
we'll
true.
get that scene.
Yeah.
Mhm.
They'll give us that scene because they're already afraid of her to some degree, and maybe they'll, somebody will come barking
Yeah.
at her and be
That's
like,
true.
I
"Well,
mean,
you
this
let
is
us-
like,
you do blah, 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 now we're stranded in the mountains," and she'll give them some. I bet.
right.
I think Lan is pretty good.
Lan's
Yeah,
good.
he's good.
I wish he looked a little more skillful, a little deadlier.
Yeah, he kind of is like slow, and I want to be like,
Haven't
you need to be
really
a little
seen
more...
him.
I
Yeah.
wish they almost like like digitally somehow enhanced him so he's like superhuman a little bit in his abilities.
subtle.
Right.
Just a little bit. You're
something.
like,
Yeah.
wow, there's something about that guy that's like a little unnatural. But what I did like about him is how protective he is of Nynaeve, of Moraine.
Yeah.
Boring, yeah.
Like even when the dust from the Wine Spring Inn collapsing falls down, he jumps and covers Moraine. Right, like
Right.
his job is to protect her. That's all he does. That's all he cares about.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I do like that.
He did go with that.
Where's his color shifting cloak though? I was wondering how they were going to show that on TV, and they just didn't do it.
They were like,
Pass.
we're not even going to try that. Yeah.
Punt it. Maybe he'll get it later.
Right? We saw Pan, Fane, and Tom and Lan.
I
They're
really
kinda
liked
like
Padden
little-
Fane.
Who's Padden Fane?
He's the peddler. He brought the Trollocs to Edmund's Field, then he chases them the whole rest of that first book.
He like has he's like
That creepy guy who steals the dagger and the horn.
Oh,
yeah, but he's like
dagger
with
and
Matt
the horn. You're talking about the
in-
books. I'm thinking about
Just-
the show.
he's
In the show, he was just the black guy who
merchant.
was the
Yeah.
peddler. Yeah.
Gotcha.
in Two Rivers, and Matt's trying to sell him
big
something.
teeth.
He's like,
Is that
yeah,
who that was
cheating
supposed to
him.
be? Wow.
The very
Okay.
smiling.
Oh, that
yeah.
was definitely Padden Fane.
Tom, I liked after he was done singing. I
Yes.
didn't like that he sang like a weird rock song that was like you
His-
said,
again,
very
his-
awkward. Like this is a
Well,
new
he's
character.
a court ex-court jester, right?
it was
He's
just
very like
weird
he's
the way they
always
did it.
way too like regal in these little inns in the book. Like that's kind of the weird thing. He's like too good at his job in the book, right? Wow, there's a cat on the microphone.
This is our guest cat. If
Yeah, this
anyone
is our
can
new
see.
kitty.
This is actually Ken. You may remember her. We got her with Mau Mau in Hancock, Michigan.
Wait,
this is
what?
Pippa. So at
Yeah.
the time when we lived in Hancock,
That's a different cat?
So we got Pippa and Mau Mau at the time, and then Ben's parents actually took Pippa, but we're watching her for the month
Oh,
while
I was
they're
going to
out.
say you got her back.
Just
dropped
dropped
her
on
off?
by. No.
They're on a big cross-country camping
So we're watching
Oh,
her.
sweet.
So
She has
she's
the
here.
downstairs apartment, as I like
Yeah.
to say. But
Nice.
We actually went and to get her. We went to the Humane Society to get Pippa because they said she's 6 months old. She's really good with dogs.
Perfect.
And they said, "Oh, you're taking her? Do you want to take Mau Mau too?
would you like to take him for free?
He hates everybody. You want him?" And we're like, "Yeah, sure,
yeah,
whatever."
let's do this.
No, he's the cat we've had
Now
forever.
he's the
Yeah,
one that,
right.
yeah, we've had longer than any of our
Right?
children.
A Jellicle cat has returned.
Oh, God.
No. Okay, anyway, sorry. I do like Tom, though, after he did his, like, weird singing
The
thing.
Tom and Matt scene
yeah,
at the
I
was
Isle
think
great.
with
that
the
was
Aiel.
good.
So,
Well, that was a good that made Tom and Matt both like, okay, here's some actual kind of like motivation and
Yeah.
characters talking to each other besides run or shut up or just the first
Yeah,
two
that was
episodes.
for once.
It's just they're just going and going and going and going. You don't really
Yeah.
get a lot other
I
than
think we're
the
finally
scene.
going to start getting...
but you don't get
getting
any. Yeah, you
characters
don't
up.
get like character development. You don't get a breath of fresh air.
I think we will now after this.
And
They
I
just
think
had
so,
to
too.
start it. Like, they
That-
had to kind of... This is a scene. This is what's happening. This is what's
Yeah.
going... And then now it's like,
And
okay, hold up.
Right?
It works
Rand and
better.
Matt.
Sorry, splitting
Yeah,
them up.
no, yeah.
They're alone. They had to get away from the Trollocs. They're now you get to have characters tell each other about how they're feeling and stuff. Like I think it'll be a pretty decent first season when it's all said and done.
I think you're right. And I'm really excited for episode 4. And it's totally because I I know exactly what's going to happen and I can't wait to see it, to
Yeah.
what in the world is going to happen.
Yeah, I'm not
and I
quite
can't
sure.
wait to find out.
Because I
Yeah.
know the overall what's going to happen, but it's like, how are we going to get there? And I'm not
Right?
quite sure what's going to
And
happen on
and
the
as
way.
soon as they did something well, I was excited. As soon as
Yes.
they like
Yeah.
that bartender with Matt and with
awesome.
Rand, and you're like, oh, this is so
Yeah.
interesting, and this is so good, and all of a sudden the twist of her being a dark friend, and you're like, oh,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah, which I
right,
did not see happening.
Rand starts
No.
panicking, and he clearly uses the power to break down that ironwood door, which she says it would
Right.
take 3 men your size to break down this
Right.
door. And he's like, yeah, right. And he clearly uses the power to escape. And
Yeah.
then Tom saves them, and he's like, guys, we got to go. You're like, ooh, this just got,
Now we're
Yeah.
I'm ready. I'm in. You know,
Yeah.
and the fact that they're like, you know, you're like, oh, only Aiel have red hair. And then all of a sudden you go, why does Rand have red hair?
Yeah, hold
Right?
up.
All of a sudden they're dropping
Yeah.
these like weird little hints. Now the Aiel's red hair was straight, Rand's is curly. That's because his mom wasn't an Aiel. She was from Camelin, but whatever.
Oh, I didn't know
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, you know Galad, Egwene and Gawain's half brother?
No. Never met him.
Never mind then.
Never met the
Galad
guy.
and Rand are half brothers. They have the same mom.
Is that right? Trying
No,
to
I
remember
haven't met him.
I don't think so. I don't know.
Galad.
He
He becomes a white cloak
has
later.
made me excited where I'm like, because I was about to start the Stormlight. Is that what I was?
Stormlight Archive?
Yes.
You
Yeah.
should start the Stormlight
Well,
Archive.
Those are
I-
great.
I started
Gosh,
to
I haven't
one
finished
day.
the
I
last.
listened to a good, I don't know, 30 minutes when I was on my walk with Potato. And then I think like the next day I broke my leg. So
Oh,
I
no.
haven't listened to those.
You need to listen to those.
But in my head, I'm like, you know what? I might start these back up before I listen to just to get another.
Let me just say quickly, side note here for the Stormlight Archive, the third book, which mainly focuses on Dalinar Kholin and his character arc, that is some of the best character
Yeah.
development I've ever read in any
Yeah.
book.
Yeah.
That third book of the Stormlight Archive is amazing.
That had me.
I don't
Well,
even
that's-
remember what happens in the first two.
I
It
need
doesn't
to just,
matter.
like,
The third
get
book is so
back
good.
into
Yeah.
a fantasy world. I feel like I listened to the
should-
first 30 minutes and I was like, I haven't been like prepared for
Kaladin.
like you need to be focused.
Hi, Goncho.
You know? And so and then yeah, once I broke my leg that I haven't gone back to
You
it.
get,
So
I think what you were getting at though is you want to start the Wheel of Time.
yes, because I feel like half the time all of a sudden a character we're talking, I would be like, you're not saying this in the right voice. Like I would like to hear it
Right.
from Michael Kramer, please.
Right. Yeah.
He who comes with the dawn, the Karakarn.
Like the way he does the voice, I want to be like, you're not doing a good Matt because Matt doesn't sound like that. He sounds like that.
He sounds like this.
I've listened to thousands of hours of these characters
Right.
speak.
I know exactly what he should sound
Right.
like. So I just really want to re-listen just to kind of, I mean, and I'm fine with the book being different from the show, but I just want to like remember kind of the overall,
Yeah.
like what's going on again.
I'm telling you. Start the Stormlight though.
I know you're saying that, but
They're better. They're
I need
better.
to get back into the.
They're better
it's-
so
It
far.
probably is
But
actually.
once again, it's like the nostalgic. Like I'm like, I just want to hear like random Matt's voice, and I
Yeah.
right.
I want to.
But
So
then, like later on, it gets to like where Rand's trying to be too much of a hard ass.
later I'll be like,
and,
God, you're being such a douche, and that, yeah,
trying to deal with all the like being like he's the king of Ilion and he's like the leader of Tyr
Yeah,
and
and that's-
like
well, but then but I know the ending. I don't have to finish, but I can like listen to the good stuff.
that's true.
So
That's true.
Yeah.
I don't know. So I'm left with like I just want to watch episode 4. I went from like after watching the first episode, I was like super angry, and by the end of the
you were
third
like,
episode,
I'm
I was
not gonna
like,
sleep.
no, I see why they dropped 3 episodes. Like somebody who
Oh, yeah.
knew what they were doing.
Somebody was like,
Oh, yeah.
"You gotta." Somebody who knew the books watched this and said, "You gotta get here."
You
Not
have to
like-
get to here.
Not,
Yeah.
and it's not. You don't have to get to a spot in the book. You have to get to a spot in the show where we're now letting characters breathe.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And-
absolutely.
That sort of thing. So whoever, I don't know who does that, makes that call. But like, if it had just been that first episode, even as
Oof.
someone who barely knows it, I had this. The first 2 episodes for me were like, I
Yeah.
don't know.
I
is
really
kinda-
hated them.
I didn't hate them. It was just like this feels
It felt
like some.
off.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just three.
W-
Three has the pacing right.
Well, there's two more things I wanted to say. One, I
Yeah.
heard that originally the first draft of the show was 10 episodes, and it was shortened down to 8. And I feel like the first 2
Wow.
episodes suffered from that.
They probably smushed them,
They probably got rid of a lot of
Possible.
the stuff at the beginning.
which makes
Yeah.
sense.
And the other thing is, episode 4 is gonna make or break it. It's either gonna
Think
keep.
so.
If episode 4
Wow.
continues to be as good as episode 3, then all the like non-book people will continue to watch, and all the book people will probably get over the fact that it's different
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
keep watching it. It'll be good. I
Yeah.
think this next one is important.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Because this
I mean,
is to
it's
see
already
how many
made.
people came back for the next week.
No,
It's already made though, so they got no reason to. It's not going to get canceled mid-season.
No, but will it continue? Which, I mean, whether or not it's the same as the book, I want to see how they do things. So
Yeah.
either way, I'm
Yeah.
hoping it's good enough that I
Gosh,
can
there's
at
only-
least see the other stuff.
Only 5 episodes left. I feel like they wasted the first 2. Like you
Yeah.
say they went from 10 to 8 and you can feel it in the first 2. I feel like they should have just got rid of those. Let's start at 3
I
and
just want,
just
but
yeah.
like there's so much that happens in the beginning that makes you like feel for that, like when they're separated, each of their
Sure.
struggles. I'm
Of
trying to get
course,
to
yeah.
Camelin. Once they're to Camelin and they meet Loyal and they travel through the ways, and then they go to Faldara, and then they go to the Eye of the World and Mafaldara. No, not Faldara.
you're just
Uh,
making sounds now.
No,
Fa.
because when Moraine says to Loyal, "We need to go to Faldara," he goes, "Well, I don't know what that is." And she's like, "Haven't you ever heard of Mafaldaranel?" And he goes, "Oh yeah, I know that old name."
Who is she talking to?
Loyal, the
Loyal,
ogre,
the
Oh,
the
big-
deer.
okay.
Yeah.
I was like, who are you impersonating right now?
Well,
okay,
I-
wait. In the book, Rand and Egwene never like sleep together, right?
I don't know
I
what
don't
happens in
know.
the book.
But yes, you do.
It doesn't say.
But in the book, I don't think
No,
they
it's
ever.
very clear that they've been like flirting with each other for 10 years,
They're
but
like
have never
teenage dating, kind of like But in this, it was like night 1, let's do this.
Mhm.
Where all of a sudden I was like, whoa! I feel in the books
What
they're
up?
they're not as much like.
I liked it though, because in the
Yeah?
books it's so much. Oh, I like her, or I like him, and there's
Well,
like, right?
nobody
I
ever
wish Rand
freaking-
was here. He's good with girls.
nobody
I
ever
wish Karen was
talks
here,
to
he's good with
anybody
girls.
else
Is that
about.
what it
Yeah,
is?
it's all just like.
Oh my gosh, you
looking
didn't
at
notice
each
that?
other from
I
afar.
love Ken.
Did you have any
doing
idea how
this.
many times they say, "I wish Perrin was here because he's good with girls," and Perrin says, "I wish Rand was here because he's
Yeah,
good
but
with
like,
girls."
I guess
that's just annoying.
It is
So I
annoying.
appreciated that they just went for it, and it's like, okay, there's a relationship here.
I just feel like they weren't as serious as all of a sudden it's like, nope, we're serious, and I want to be like, but they're not that serious. Like,
I don't know.
I don't know. It's not that big of a deal though, because right away then it's like you guys they both kind of hate each other. So
How many
It's true.
how many wives does he wind up with throughout the various books? Like
Many.
30? 3? So they're
3.
not going to do that, right?
I don't
No, I
know.
I don't think they
Are-
can, but
can
I don't know
they?
what they would do because all 3 of
wonder
his
if they'll
wives
just
are
have
very
3
important
relationships.
characters.
Right?
Yeah, I think they'll do 3 relationships.
Yeah.
But they probably won't be like bloop, all at
Well,
once.
he better end up with
But
Min.
I
hope.
remember specifically there's a scene where it's like, because don't they
Min's
all?
the best one.
They all like connect. What do? They all.
They all bond him as a warder.
They all. That's it. They all bond him, so they can all feel each
So
other.
every time he's
So
like
then he's-
with another one of them, the other two can feel it.
Which I hated. They
Gross.
And
would be
it's
like,
described as the burning
"Whoa."
fire within him. That's how they always that's how the
Gross.
other women feel the burning desire within him.
So it's always like he's with Elaine, and they're like, "Whoa!"
Whoa,
like
they're
Min
like-
can't stand.
It's a
and
bit
you're like,
like,
"Ugh, okay, this is getting a little creepy.
It's a
at
bit
this
like I'll
point."
have what she's having
Right.
Is
sort of
it a bit like-
situation.
Except you're being force fed what she's having.
Yeah.
Gross.
And you know that your
I'm
husband
glad
was
I
someone
put
else
these
at the
books
time.
down.
Like this is
I'm
that
glad
is
I
the part that I'm
stopped.
like, Didn't need that.
Well, should I
So-
spoil the whole book series? Like at the very last scene of
Oh,
the book,
very
when like
end. Okay, wait, before you say this, though,
Takes
I
his
will
3
admit,
wives
as
and he-
much as like you kind of get over the like he's got the 3 wives, it's weird, but like it's supposed to be this weird bond. He needs each of them for a different part of being, the Dragon Reborn. Blah blah blah. You kind of get over it because he's not like. In the books, they don't make it creepy where it's like, oh, because I'm with all these like women kind of thing.
Huh.
But at the very end of the battle, last battle, and all this, in the bookends, I was like, I'm sorry, did I skip a couple chapters? Like, this couldn't have been the end. Something, I must have missed something. And then I get back, and Ben's like, what'd you think? And I was like, what the fuck was that? Like,
it's like, okay, shut this off. I'm glad you guys tuned in. Whoever tuned
you
in and
shut
listened
this
to
off.
this
You're telling people.
episode
Stop
of us
it.
reviewing the first three episodes of the TV series. We'll be back
don't wanna-
after episode 8 to review the full first season. I think that'll be a really good idea for us
cool.
to have
Yeah.
second thoughts. So thanks for tuning in. But if you want to hear, like, the end of the book series, right, is like Rand's body by the end of the series. He's lost a hand. He has the never healing wound in his side. He's like completely beat up and destroyed. And at the very end, that former Damani, what is her name? She's a really powerful channeler.
I don't remember.
I can't remember. And she helps him transform his consciousness from his body to Moradin's body. Because Moradin gets killed. It has something to do with Kalendor. I don't remember.
I
Moradin. So is Shamael, who's Balsamon, the fiery-eyed guy. He
Which
gets
looks
killed.
awful in this show, by the way.
Yeah, it's very weird.
It's very,
Like,
like,
where's
they're
the like?
really
like-
bad.
A spooky Halloween.
Yeah.
You can't
It
hide
looks like
from
a
me,
man.
Lutheran.
But he's,
I
like,
need to
in
be
the
like with the
window.
burning. It is kind
Yeah.
of like
I
the
hope they get more
Tellerandria
money.
dreams so far have been kind of weird. But there's so much to talk. We could talk longer than the shows go for
yeah,
about
we
the
could,
shows.
but
So like whatever happens at the end, he switches bodies with Moradin. There's a big pyre for Rand's body, and there's a funeral, and like his body's being burned, but his consciousness is in Moradin. He wakes up as Moradin's body, and then like all 3 of like Min, Elaine, and Avienda are like winking at each other, because they're like, he's still alive. I
yeah,
can
everyone's
feel
like,
him.
it's really weird. They're not very sad. And they're like, I don't know, it's
I
kind of
don't
strange.
know, weird. And like Rand, they can feel Rand is still awake, but he's in a different body now. And he's like, and he takes out a pipe, and he like can't even sense the 1 power anymore that he can channel. And it doesn't matter. He just
No,
like
doesn't he do something though?
he,
like
he
lights
can't
his
channel,
pipe or
but he just
something.
lights his pipe. He just like he just makes the pattern light his pipe. He just has I don't know what kind of power he has. He can't channel the
Yes.
power anymore. He's like Neo in the
He
Matrix.
just
Right,
is the
yeah.
power.
He's not like he just
puts on
has
his
control of
sunglasses
the
and
pattern.
flies at the
And-
screen.
but he does
is
that,
like
and then
that.
he's like, "I'll be off,"
That's
and he just kind of like
that's
rides
how the
off.
the last book ends. He somehow, let's call it magically, because the magic system in the game is like very very hard. This is how magic works. So that's not magic anymore. It's a scientific system of the books.
Right.
Let's say
right.
he magically lights his pipe and is like, "Well,
Winks at
time
the
to see what's
camera.
next."
Yeah.
And it's like the 3 women
Randall
watch him
Thor's
ride
day
off,
off.
and they kind of
They're like,
wink.
"What's up, buddy?"
They kind of wink at each other on the way, and they're like, "Oh, it's too bad that Rand died." And they-
Katsuane is probably there, and she probably knows because why does she knows everything?
It's so weird, and the whole time everyone's like, "It's weird." They're not sad at all that Rand died. And they're
Gwen's
like,
dead.
whatever,"
Gawain's dead. Galad is dead.
and that's it. And then
I
it's
do
like
remember Galad.
the end.
I do remember Galad.
We're all dead.
Now I remember.
It's only
Buddies with
Lan who
Matt,
kills
right?
Demandred, but doesn't. No, Lan survives, doesn't he?
Think, but
Remember,
I don't
Gawain
remember.
puts on like 8 of those rings that make you
Like,
live for like
it's
30 seconds,
yeah.
and he's like, "I'm gonna kill this." Each one of these rings you put on makes you like more powerful,
He, like,
and he
gets
puts on like
crazy.
all of them, and he's like, he still can't beat him.
No, but it's the whole ending. All of a sudden, you're like, "Hold on, what?" And Rand doesn't say anything to everyone. He's just like, "Gotta go," and the women wink at each other, and that's the end.
The
And you're like, "I'm what? What? Huh?"
I don't know. Are we past the end of the pod? I hope the podcast got shut off because
It
Didn't.
didn't.
It did not. It's
Like,
messed up though.
the whole thing of like Rand, the last time you see Rand is actually the last book that Robert Jordan wrote. because
he
then he
turns
turns into-
into.
he turns into Luz Theron.
Which
is
I also hated
dumb.
that.
I hate
I wish
that.
it
When you
was
told
like-
me that, I was so mad. I think
Yeah.
that
That's
might
the
be why I
last
stopped
time you see
reading.
Rand.
It's like I'm not reading this if he becomes a different person.
Yeah, I wish it was like he's still him, but maybe he even has like some of the thoughts or the past
No, he's
life or
just
whatever.
The other
But
guy.
instead, it was like the other guy just took over, and you're like, so Rand is just gone?
Gone? Yeah.
Like he's just like took his body essentially. Like that doesn't make sense either.
All right. Let's stop it there. If you've made it this far, thanks for listening. We really appreciate
Spoiler
you.
City.
And I hope you love the Wheel of Time as much as I do. You probably won't.
Not
Emily,
after this.
you should listen to the Stormlight Archive
gonna
so we
do
can
Wheel
start
of Time
talking about
first.
that.
Yeah.
I guess it's Michael Kramer either way. If you
Yeah.
do listen to Wheel
Modern
of
day
Time,
Michael Kramer.
you want the one with Michael Kramer and Kate Redding.
Yes.
They're because I saw an article that the actors were, or like the one that does Moraine was recording a new audiobook.
You don't need that. Michael Kramer and Kate Redding do
Which
such a good
I'm
job.
saying don't do the new audiobook. Do the older one because it is
Yeah.
fantastic.
And they also read the Stormlight Archive. So you just roll from Wheel of Time right into Stormlight.
I think that's what I need to
You
do though.
stay
I
on
need
that
to
train.
like get on the fantasy train and then roll into the other
All
one.
aboard.
All right.
So
Okay, so we will be back in 1 week with a regular episode of the podcast, which we're going to squeeze in right before Ken goes to his brother's wedding, which I'm sure will be a fantastic time.
Very
and then
jealous.
the week after that, we will be live streaming the D List, where we'll be doing a Christmas movie special. We haven't decided what our Christmas movie is yet, but we may have some special guests. So we
yeah.
can't wait to see you guys in the future. And until next time, from the Day Night Die Studios, everybody have a great time.
Okay.
Bye.